Andy Graham here with you, taking your phone calls at 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll-free or locally at 334-887-3401. Sportscall is brought to you by Auburn Urgent Care, which offers convenient solutions for your healthcare and occupational medicine needs, including workman's compensation injury care and certified DOT medical examinations. With locations on South College and in Tigertown, visit them online at auburnurgentcare.com. We'll actually pick your phone calls up in the next segment. We're now going to invite in one of our regular guests here, Keith Niebuhr, national college football recruiting reporter for 24/7 Sports. Hey, Keith, how's it going today?
Good. What's going on, guys?
Not a whole lot. Now, Keith, we've seen really a landmark week in college football this past week. The NCAA comes out and gives autonomy, which I don't know if they had much choice, to the Power 5 conferences. Then a couple of days later, the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit is settled, or at least the verdict has come out. Still appeals are pending on that. Now, you make your living in the recruiting world. How do you see the now authority and power that's been given to the Power 5 conferences? How do you think that's going to affect your business? How do you think that's going to affect recruiting in the coming years?
I don't think anything's going to change, I'll be honest with you. I mean, people disagree with me, but the Power 5 is the Power 5 because they out-recruit everybody to begin with, and because they already had greater resources and including facilities, money. When I say money, I mean to improve facilities, to have the best equipment rooms and stadiums and all that. So in that regard, I just don't see it changing too much, quite honestly. The ruling itself in the O'Bannon case, I mean, that could be a few more years before that's completely settled anyway. It's probably too soon to figure it out. But I think that people always talk, I get a kick out of it. Maybe you guys did too, but every year you hear about all the parity. And if you open up the top 20, AP top 20, I guess they didn't do top 25 till a couple of decades ago, but the top 20, let's see, 30 years ago. And it's probably 15 of the same teams that are in it right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, the more things change, the more they really stay the same. And, I don't have a problem with the Power 5 getting all this autonomy. And I'll tell you why. Because for years that has always been the complaint that the president of Lemoyne College could dictate or have as much say as the president at Auburn or Georgia or Florida State. And those schools were always upset about that. And in fact, in the 1980s, I think they thought about doing something football only. If my memory's right, I was a kid, but I believe something along the lines of the College Football Association, something like that. I can't remember the specifics of it, but it was, if my memory's correct, it was kind of a way for the big schools to try to get some more power. And I don't think it's going to hurt anything. I mean, again, the Power 5 is the Power 5. Now, that may turn into the Power 4 someday or the Power 6. I mean, things will always change. I mean, look how much the landscape has changed just in the last 20 years. I mean, who would have ever thought Arkansas and Texas A&M would be in the Southeastern Conference or Missouri for that matter. So, but in terms of recruiting, I just a minimal impact. I mean, the haves are always going to be the haves, and the have-nots are always going to have to fight and scrape for everything.
Well, as far as the Power 5 are concerned, what do you think about, we talk about giving athletes the full cost of attendance, the stipends, and how that's going to be regulated. It might not be the same for one school as another. Do you see as that becoming an issue in recruiting, or teams trying to exploit that?
I haven't heard one thing about it. Honestly, one, I don't delve too deep into it, quite honestly, so I'm probably, even though I cover recruiting, I'm really not a great authority on this, but I've not heard one kid mention it, and I haven't dug too deep into it, so I really can't say.
Well, the number one defensive tackle or the number one defensive line prospect in the entire country is scheduled to announce today. I think most everybody feels like he's a Georgia lean. Do you have a prediction? I know Auburn is in the mix, Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia, but how do you feel this one going?
Yeah, I mean, I felt for a long time it was Auburn. As some Georgia fans have kind of given me some grief. I guess back in March, I said that he potentially could end up in the Auburn class, and maybe he still could. But all along, I thought Georgia, and I predicted him officially in our crystal ball section. And I haven't changed that. And I did that back in February. Matter of fact, some people did it last year. He's been a Georgia lean all the way. It's our information, though, that Auburn is going to finish second. Now, okay, so what does that really mean? Does that mean anything? Well, maybe not. I mean, we still feel like at the end of the day he's going to sign with Georgia, but apparently it was closer than people thought, and he's going to say that in the next couple of hours, supposedly. Is that just him talking, or is it the truth? I mean, we'll have to find out down the road, but if it was really close, maybe there's a chance Auburn can get him to officially visit. Anything can happen. There was a defensive tackle last year from Carrollton, Georgia, Dontavius Russell, committed to Georgia on April Fool's Day. And, if that December comes around and all of a sudden he attends the Iron Bowl in late November, a few days later decommits and ends up part of the Auburn class. You never really know, but the feeling is it's Georgia, and it's probably going to stay Georgia. And it's our understanding that Auburn kind of got wind of his pick a few weeks ago, was kind of pointed out that this is probably going to happen. Now, they'll still keep recruiting him. Auburn defensive line coach Rodney Garner is one of the best closers in the business, and they'll keep recruiting him. But, they're not going to put all their eggs into one basket, so to speak. They've got 3 to 4 defensive line positions to fill, and they can't really dilly-dally around now. It's time to get, kind of roll up the sleeves and narrow in on zero in on some guys. And at the end of the day, if you can get a Trent Thompson, you make room for him. You figure out how to get him in the class. But it's important now that they go out and find 3 other defensive linemen between now and signing day to make sure they finish with 4. That's necessary.
We've got Keith Niebuhr here, National College Football recruiting reporter for 24/7 Sports. Should Auburn be worried about Tony Bridges?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, how worried is the question. I think you're always got to be, well, maybe concern is the better word. He is saying he's going to officially visit Ole Miss. Here's what's funny, guys, and he said he's going to officially visit Ole Miss for the Alabama game, and he says he's going to officially visit Auburn for the LSU game, most likely. But there's one problem: they're the same day. Okay, so he's got to get his logistics figured out. He's a really nice young guy, and he's a heck of a player. I don't know Ole Miss's defensive back situation as well as I know Auburn's, but the feeling is if he does land at Auburn, very good chance of not only being a major contributor in 2015, but a possible or even probable starter at the cornerback position. Good height, he's a 6'1.5", 6'2", right in that range. Lanky, long arms. Really was the one guy in junior college to hang with current Auburn receiver Dykeel Williams last year. They were teammates in Mississippi Gulf Coast, and they said Dykeel got challenged more in practice by far than he did in any game. So he's an outstanding player, but Ole Miss is giving him a lot to think about. He is a Mississippi native, okay, and that can dictate things. He's got friends up there, but he's got friends at Auburn. But it's really going to come down to those 2 schools a bit. But again, he is saying he's going to officially visit both, and if you have a guy like that committed to your school, you'd prefer him not visit a school in state, to where he's from. So it's a concern. But I think at the end of the day, Auburn knew that, and they feel good. They were the first big school to offer him. Committed Auburn without even stepping on campus, and now it's been a couple of times. One of his teammates is committed to Auburn, and one of his other teammates is being heavily pursued by Auburn. So it seems like he'll probably end up at Auburn, but again, things can change. And with junior college kids, he's noticed that they change a lot.
Definitely, unless it's a multiplicity situation, he's going to have to make up his mind one way or the other, I suppose.
Yeah.
Let's take a run through Auburn's latest recruits here. Just give me your impressions and give me a little evaluation. Richard McBride, and is it Juan Tavius or John Tavius Johnson?
It's John Tavis.
Okay, John Tavis Johnson and Richard McBride.
Yeah, well, let's start with John Tavis. We have him as a 4-star. Most people have him as a 3-star. Kind of under the radar. Isn't a guy that went to a lot of camps. Wasn't at the Nike camps, wasn't at the Under Armour camps. I believe he did camp at Alabama, but that's a closed camp, so media can't get in there. And he camped at Auburn, but that was a year ago. So he's kind of a mystery to a lot of people. He also doesn't have a ton of film out there for public consumption. But Auburn likes him a lot. He's a big kid, 6'2.5", 6'3", 330 pounds. He'll be a defensive tackle, probably not a 3 technique at defensive tackle, probably a guy that lines up closer to the center. Big, powerful kid. Bench press is 405 pounds, strong leg press. Really has to learn how to play, though. Young defensive linemen, a couple things stand out for most of them. Technique, most good players still are learning at that age, but technique. And then also, how hard do they push themselves? Montravis Adams is a heck of a player for Auburn right now with a lot of potential. But when you go back to high school, you could go to one of his games, and sometimes he would vanish for 2 quarters. They get bored. When you're so dominant, you can get a little bored. So John Tavis has to learn how to push himself. But Auburn loves, through our sources, we've learned that Auburn loves the body, the frame, all that stuff, and the explosiveness, which is what you really want out of a defensive tackle. Can he burst through? Can he get skinny in space? Can he really wreak havoc, take on multiple blockers? They think he can do that. The second guy you mentioned is Richard McBride. He's a 4-star linebacker from Troy, Alabama, Charles Henderson High School. We have him as a low 4-star. Some people have him higher than others. He's an Under Armour All-American. I think he's fantastic. And the question always was, again, he's another guy that doesn't go to any events, so he's kind of a mystery in that regard. But seeing him in person, he's at least 6'1.5", probably 6'2", long arms, can really grow into that body. And when you watch his film, when you turn on the video, again, I'm not Bill Parcells here, but it's pretty obvious when a guy can play. Explodes through the gaps, great acceleration, really strong closing speed, seems to have fantastic instincts, and really can hit people. I mean, when he gets his hand on somebody, they're not getting away from him. That's a guy that can play either really any linebacker position. He could even play the star position that Auburn has. He's just a fantastic athlete. His father played basketball at Troy many years ago, and actually came out of high school the same year as Chuck Person, the famous Auburn basketball player, and played in a state all-star game with him. He's now deceased, but the kid's a fantastic young guy, excellent athlete, really good player, extremely high upside.
Now you mentioned, Johnson from Lincoln is the only defensive line commitment right now for this Auburn class. A guy like Maurice Wayne, who comes out earlier and says that Auburn is his leader from Mississippi Gulf Coast. Is he a guy that Auburn is looking at as very important?
Well, I think they can be paid. In a way, they've got to fill it. They got to fill these spots. But also, last year they didn't have many defensive linemen committed at this time. They had a great season, and you close strong. You knock on enough doors, you never know which one's going to open, right? And so they can afford to be a little patient. If Auburn has another strong season, all of a sudden you start fielding phone calls from kids that maybe you hadn't heard from ever or in a long time. They do like Maurice Wayne a lot. He was offered a couple weeks ago. Could he commit on the spot right now? That I'm not sure. Maybe, maybe not. And I know people always say, well, what's the point of offering if a kid can't take it? Well, the reason is you don't want to be the last to offer. You don't want to come in late. You can say, hey, you got an offer, but let's take this thing slowly. And kids usually don't have any problem with taking things slowly because I think they're going to get more offers. But he's a big kid, 6'5", 305-pound range. Again, another Mississippi Gulf Coast kid. He's from LaGrange, Georgia, and back in high school he committed to Indiana, but as an offensive lineman, if my memory's correct, or he was rated as an offensive lineman. But he also, a lot of other schools were after him, too. University of Washington liked him a lot. He's got some talent. I think people knew that his grade situation wasn't going to be that great back in high school, and that's probably why he didn't have more offers. They're fairly high on him. It was a little surprising that they offered him this summer. The talk was, and this is from Maurice, that he thought that he would have to go out and earn it this fall. So they must have gone back through, watched the film, or maybe they did that and just evaluated their current situation. I mean, they're recruiting a couple of dozen defensive linemen aggressively right now that we know of, and there's always ones behind the scenes that we don't know of, but a couple dozen, and I think maybe they wanted to have a few that they felt good about. But again, Auburn can afford to be a little bit patient with him, I think. If you look at his offers, the ones that stand out are Auburn and Mississippi State. Mississippi State's class is sort of filling up. So Auburn's in a pretty good position with him. If they really want to push, they could probably get him.
A very good friend of the program, Keith Niebuhr, national college football recruiting reporter for 24/7 Sports. We really appreciate you educating us and being on the program this afternoon.
Well, anytime. I'm sorry I couldn't talk a little bit more about the Power 5 situation. I get so locked in with seeing kids and where they're visiting and all that stuff that sometimes I don't ask the bigger picture questions. So I'll try to look into that a little bit more.
I'm not sure any of us truly know the answers to what it's going to be like and all the things that are really going to unfold because we're all kind of in uncharted water.